Hello everyone, and welcome to this review of Fans Toys FT61 Inquisitor, um, everyone's favourite tracker Scourge. I've been waiting for this figure for ages. It just seems like a long time since it was teased, and yeah, it kind of dropped. I was expecting it to drop last year, but it obviously slipped over into the new year, and not what you need in January after the expense of Christmas, but quite glad to have it. So let's go through the usual process. If you've ever watched any of my videos before, if you're subscribed to the channel, you'll be familiar what I'm going to do. I'm going to give a quick overview of the box, the accessories, then we'll take a look at the figure. I'll show you the alt mode, hopefully as long as I can actually transform it. Won't be transforming it on camera, but I'll show you the results. And then we'll do things like articulation, all that kind of stuff, comparisons with other bots and all that kind of good stuff before I give you some final thoughts. But anyway, let's kick off, as always, with a look at the packaging. Excuse the glare from the light. I don't have the best setup still, I'm afraid, but hopefully you can see what's going on. Again, very, very typical Fans Toys box here. If you've seen one, you've seen them all, you know what you're getting. It is a very nice looking box, I'll give it that. It's got the usual product shots, some bio text there, which they usually do. I don't know if you can actually make that out, but I'll bring it in a bit closer so you can hopefully see it if you're one of those people who likes to freeze frame and read. Nothing really groundbreaking with this, so let's not spend too long on it. Get that fella out of the way. And then let's take a look at some of the stuff we get with it first. Get a nice manual here. This is one of the larger manuals I've seen. Nice colour illustrations there, sorry. With the horrendously complicated steps for transforming this figure. I've already seen videos and I'm weeping at the prospect. But yeah, it shows you the accessories. Obviously, you've got the target master there, some alternate faces, a gun, and a flight stand adapter, not a flight stand, which is something I'll chat about in a moment. But yeah, whew, that looks like fun, eh? You also get the usual collector card. Again, you've seen one of these, you've seen them all, haven't you? Still made of that plastic credit card type material, and comes with, again, another sort of look at the bio in pretty small text actually, and then some text specs which I can't read, but I'm sure it's the usual fire blast, speed, strength, intelligence, rank, all that kind of thing. Onto other accessories. You get the aforementioned flight stand adapter, which is supposed to be paired with Fans Toys flight stand. They're overpriced flight stand they keep trying to flog, but yeah, so not much use really unless you've got the actual flight stand from them. So that's an accessory that essentially is trying to get you to spend more money for this figure, so not great really in my mind. But you do get some quite nice additional faces actually, so let's have a look at those. Let's see if I can go through them in order. They're very subtle differences between them. So I'll show you the face he has on in a moment, but you get some alternate faces. You get, I don't know how well these will focus. I always have trouble with this, so apologies. There we go. That's a slightly open-mouthed face sculpt. Then there is come on, focus, damn you. There is a smiling, grinning face sculpt, if you can see that, if you can make it out, which, yeah, looks okay. You can certainly, see Scourge doing that. Then there's a shouting face sculpt. Yeah, that sculpt's pretty nice as well. And then there is also a face sculpt with coolant tears. So that would be from the episode, I think, is it The Burden Hardest to Bear, where he gets the Matrix and it drives him a bit mad and he gets mutated. Yeah, that is from that episode, that one thing. I really do like the metallic red eyes on that, and I think, you know, they've really done a good job with the beard, etc. He really does like evoke the spirit of Scourge. And let's just have a look at the actual face sculpt you get with him, the default one, if it will focus. There you go. You can see that's a very sort of neutral face, and again you can see those lovely metallic red eyes and the beard and everything. It looks great. The other accessory you get is this lovely gun, which is acid ray gun, I believe, from my memory, which is really nice, well painted, looks really great. All of this obviously is giving you a sneak peek at the figure, so I might as well just bring him in now. No point messing around. And let's put him center. Just going to drop the camera down slightly. There we go. So there we have him, Inquisitor, Scourge in all of his glory. And my initial impressions of this figure were very favourable indeed, I have to say. I've been waiting some time for it. Obviously I own X-Transbot's Andras. I'm a big fan of the character of Scourge. I know in the cartoon he wasn't the brightest or the greatest, along with Cyclonus, but my love of the character and of excuse me, all three of the Unicronian Heralds comes from the Marvel comic run, where they had a much larger presence in the UK stories, at least, and much, you know, their characters were fleshed out to a much greater degree. They had some, you know, spotlight stories, multiple spotlight stories, and you know, 9-10-year-old me thought they were the coolest thing ever, because, you know, they were basically reconstructed as ultimate warriors from the remains of dead Decepticons by a demigod. Yeah, pretty cool stuff. And I just love the designs as well. And, you know, again, what would I have been? Yeah, sort of 10, maybe even 10, 11 when the movie came out, actually. Sort of at the end of my sort of love of playing with toys and stuff sort of stage. But still love Transformers. So I remember being obsessed with the movie. And the Scourge toy was just, you know, nothing like the cartoon model. So and the same could be true of all of them, you know, Galvatron and Cyclonus included, and the Autobots themselves. So I waited many years to get my hands on figures that look like the cartoon, as with most of the Masterpiece style figures. But Scourge is one of the ones that particularly I was looking forward to something that really resembled the cartoon model. And Andras scratched the itch, and it got part of the way there. But from the first moment I saw the silhouette of this guy, when Fans Toys teased it, I knew it was going to be better, or it was going to be a closer match to the animation model, and really doesn't disappoint. I love the way this figure looks. I think it's a beautiful figure. Not without its issues, which I'll talk about, but it's just, looking at it now on camera, it's just such a lovely looking piece. Really nicely sculpted. It really does look like the animation model in every sort of major area. You know, it's not 100% faithful. Obviously compromises have to be made with any sort of 3D transition. You're not having a 2D cartoon model here, are you? It's got to work, it's got to be engineered, it's got to transform, it's a physical thing. But yeah, it's a really great looking piece, and I would say almost certainly on balance my favorite of the three Fans Toys Decepticon figures from the movie. Let's see if I can bring him in a little bit closer so you can get a view of some of his. It's one of the things with his wings. They do have a tendency to get knocked and move about a bit. But yeah, just give you a little 360 on him. He does have quite a large backpack, which makes him very top heavy, and he has a tendency to fall back. I've actually used some filler parts that are used for alt mode as heel spurs here, just so he's a bit more stable for this review. He will stand without them, but he's still a little bit wonky. He does have a tendency to move because of this additional weight. There's a lot of die cast in it. It's a heavy figure. You can hear the clunk test. But yeah, with those out, they're not terribly unsightly, especially if you're looking at your figures from anything other than the rear. I mean, they only really show if you look from the rear. So I think that the trade-off's worth having them there. Very clean from the back again. It's quite a large backpack, but it's very clean, proportionate. All looks lovely. Just so the contours of this figure are just great. It looks really almost organic, doesn't it? Which is what I always loved about Scourge's design. I thought he looked really, really cool. Probably the most interesting of the three in terms of his design. Whereas, he's basically like a big vampire bat, isn't he? Whereas Galvatron and Cyclonus were actually, more favoured characters in my mind. I really do like the way that that Scourge looks. So yeah, that's the initial look. I just realised I forgot something, sorry, from the accessories portion of the review. Silly me, and there is a reason I forgot it, actually. It's because it's quite forgettable. I forgot to highlight the Target Master. Actually, the Target Master looks pretty damn good. It's a really nice looking figure, but there's a major flaw with it, which I'll come to discuss in a bit. But yeah, it's actually a really nice looking figure. It does look really, really good. It's probably the best looking of the Fans Toys and X-Transbots Target Masters so far in bot mode, and even in the alt mode, it doesn't look too bad. But anyway, that's another thing that you get with it, which is supposed to add value. But there's a major caveat with this, which we'll touch upon in a short while. Anyway, I'm going to sort of tidy up my area, and then I'm going to come back and we'll do like a quick articulation checklist before we move on. Okay, and we're back with the articulation checklist. Now, what I wanted to show just quickly before I do that is the reason I was saying that this was a major caveat. You can see here I've transformed the Target Master into alt mode, and it does look nice. However, there is one major issue with it. It uses the standard Masterpiece style tab system, but sorry, that's a bit low. You can see that there, and obviously Scourge has the usual thing in his palm. The problem is that the handle is way too short, so you can't actually put the gun in his hand. He cannot hold his Target Master, which is a bit of a problem. If you put it in upside down, it kind of goes in, and the fingers can grip it and hold it, but that's not correct. And again, it still doesn't stay in the palm, unlike the gun, which stays in no problem. Somebody effed up here, pretty big time. And Fans Toys, there's no conceivable way that they couldn't have known about this or didn't know about this before they shipped the figure. So it is very disappointing that they chose to just ignore it. And it's actually quite telling that none of the pre-release materials, like the videos they posted on YouTube, showed him holding his Target Master. And now we know why he can't. So not quite an articulation thing, but I wanted to cover it before we moved on, because I feel it's definitely worth mentioning, because this Target Master would have added to the overall value, or overall cost of the figure, and that it can't even fulfill its basic function is pretty inexcusable and a little bit embarrassing for Fans Toys. and they've been very tight-lipped on it so far. They haven't actually commented on it. Whether they'll offer replacements or whether they'll package it in with a future figure, that's probably more likely. Or maybe they'll just ignore it, or I don't know, maybe we'll get an adapter, whatever. I personally don't care about Target Masters at all. They just, they're just never something. They were something that was invented to sell the same figure twice with the little gun accessory, weren't they? At the end of the day, you bought your Cyclonus and your Scourge, then a year later they sold you Cyclonus and Scourge again with a little robot gun. They weren't something that really bothered me all that much. Target Masters, Headmasters slightly different, but Target Masters, never really bothered by them. But this would have, I don't know how much it would have cost to produce this little Target Master figure, but there's a bit of engineering gone into it and materials. So even if it added a tenner to the cost, or even a £5, it's still more than I'm happy with, given that the figure was 150 odd pounds, which is quite a lot for this size figure. So yeah, it's pretty bad show from Fans Toys, but there we go. Enough of that. This is supposed to be the articulation checklist section, so let's get rid of that. Let's start as we usually do at the top. I'll just move the camera up a little bit because it will help to get him slightly more in frame. So we have the usual can look up, but can't really look down post mechanism. He can also look around a bit, but obviously this collar is limited, and when he does look up you can see the post underneath, which I prefer ball joints to post, to be honest. He doesn't have a lot of clearance to move because of the design, or his character design, but it is what it is. Like that's Scourge at the end of the day, but you get a reasonable range of motion out of it. Like maybe not so much there, enough for him to look slightly left or right, but if you move it up a bit he can look more to the side. But yeah, not a huge range of motion, but it's a design issue at the end of the day, isn't it? Unless this whole piece moved, which is not really practical. The wings are interesting because they are also individually posable. Now, I'm not a huge fan of the gap in the wings. I think they probably could have done something better with that. I don't really know how. I'm not an engineer, but I feel like there was a way to accomplish something similar to what X-Transbots did and have it as a continuous piece, or at least an illusion of it being a contiguous piece. Sorry. It's a minor quibble, I guess, but it's one that I notice as I look at the figure now. But the wings, anyway, they are posable. You can move them up and down on this armature in the back. They are somewhat hindered by the backpack though, and you don't want to go scraping the paint. So you have to be careful. Basically, you don't want to scratch this gorgeous paint job. But they are movable, so you can have them tucked away at the back there like that if you would like to. I mean, that's not actually a terrible look on him, to be honest. Have them sort of back down as a cowl like that, almost a cape. He usually had his wings splayed a lot more, didn't he, in the show? But I don't dislike that look. When they're a bit higher, like that, I feel like I don't want to break these, so I'm just being careful. They can wrap around, as you can see. They can either be back or forward, so that's quite good. And of course, this is actually posable as well. So if you did, you could wrap this whole thing around him as if he was a bat, roosting for the evening or something like that. I have unpegged the backpack in doing this as well, which is something that happens a bit more than I would like, but I'm just going to try and fix that a moment. Sorry. It's a bit rough and ready, but it'll do for the purposes of this video now. Moving on, that is something that does happen. The backpack does come untabbed a bit if you're messing with the wings too much, but you're not going to be doing that in everyday use, are you? Not all the time. The arms are on a soft ratchet, and they have a decent range of motion. They can go up to about there, sort of just over the horizontal. and obviously they're on a sort of friction, which is quite loose actually, I have to say. I don't know if it could actually even hold the weight of the Target Master properly, but yeah, the friction is there, and he also has a trying to get him more in frame for you. Has a shoulder or bicep swivel there, which is quite good. The elbows are single jointed, but you do get a good range of motion. You can get just over 90 degrees on them. And the hands are also not perfect, because the fingers, which are very nicely painted actually, the thumb is on a ball joint, which is similar to X-Transport's Andras, but Andras has individually ball jointed fingers, so you can splay them to make a nice claw shape. But this guy doesn't. They're just the normal Masterpiece style hands. So yeah, you can't do as much with them. They're not as versatile, but they do have the sort of range of motion you'd expect, and you can get some kind of nice, poses out of them if you mess about. I find these harder than the ball jointed ones to get into a natural looking pose with the hand, but you can sort of do it if you mess around with them. And the actual hand itself is on a ball joint, so you've got a little bit of inward movement like that should you want it. Not too much out, but a little bit of inward, and it moves around nicely. Let's just get this out of the way so we can show you a little bit more. The waist is on a soft ratchet again, and you get a nice range of motion there. The backpack doesn't really interfere with it, which is good, so you can get quite a lot of motion on it. And it does also have an ab crunch, which is like fairly deep actually, a lot more than some figures. You can actually look down pretty well, and it doesn't actually break the sculpt too much. I mean, from the back you can see that it obviously does look like part of the bot is missing and it's on this narrow piece, but because of the wings in the backpack hide it from some angles. If you were to do some photography, for example, he could be looking down at some humans with scorn, and it wouldn't be too visible. Let's just pop him back together. The legs are pretty standard, to be honest. You have some skirts, hip skirts to the front, and some hip skirts to the side. The hip skirts to the side don't really move much. There's hardly any movement in them at all. Now, the thing is, though, they're not really the limiting factor. The limiting factor here is sadly the rear hip skirts, which don't move. So you can kick back, you can kick back with him a bit, but not too much before he runs into those rear hip skirts. And what you don't want to do is hit those, because you're going to chip the paint. So you can sort of move back, but I'm really paranoid about chipping that paint, because I can already see some paint chipping on him. Similarly, when you go out to the side, you're going to hit that unless you rotate the leg like that. Then you can get a bit more out, but you can't do it if the leg is flush, like it's like that. That's as far as you can really get it before you start to think, oh, I'm going to chip something or scratch something. It's a bit better news forward. You can get up to the horizontal before you start to look at almost horizontal, not quite, before you start to hit the hip skirt. But I mean, to be honest, it's okay for most people, isn't it? Most people are going to stick it in a cabinet in an A stance, aren't they? Let's face it. So yeah, it's a bit limited around the hips, which is a bit sad, but you should be okay for most display purposes. If you like to do dynamic photography with them, it might be a bit limiting. He does have a thigh swivel, as you can see, which is about standard. That's pretty much what you'd expect from most figures. Certainly no worse than most. And he has double jointed knees. So you have this first joint there, which gets you to about 90. But then this joint here, obviously, you can move that forward if you want, which obviously looks really weird because that's not supposed to look like that, is it? But obviously it can also move back, so you can get a really nice deep knee bend there if you want it. It does create some of the problems with stability when standing there, if I'm honest, because it has a tendency to want to topple forward. Coming down to the feet, with these lovely painted toes, spiky toes, you have a nice ankle rocker. Again, it's the type that's on this one armature, so it looks a bit weird because, you know, it only bends on there and then there's nothing here. So I don't like that big gap, but you know, it's a design issue, isn't it? Limitation. And you have a bit of movement down like that, so you can point the toe down a bit, and then the toe itself moves as well. But again, that looks a bit odd. But there isn't, sadly, much room or much wiggle room to move the toe up, so you can't really have him sort of leaning forward because the toe just doesn't articulate up that much. But you know, there's going to be enough there for most people, I think. And if I just move the camera down again now, so he's a little bit more in frame, I think, you know, most people, as I say, even if you do a little bit more than an A stance, you can get some slightly more dynamic poses out of him if you're willing to mess about a bit. And you know, even if you're only doing something as simplistic as that kind of stance, most people, as I say, when displaying, don't go crazy, do they? It's really just the sort of the photographer crowd or the photography crowd who are going to be disappointed. But yeah, that's really about it. There's no other sort of articulation really to speak of. You don't have any gimmicks in the chest here, like there's no plasma energy chamber key in there, no matrix storage vault or whatever you want to call it, cavity there. So that's pretty much it. But honestly, it hits all the major notes. You're not going to really have too many complaints, but it's not the most articulated or well articulated figure in my collection, but it's far from the worst, so not too bad overall. Okay, so we've taken a look at the articulation and the accessories, etc. I'm now going to transform this guy off camera. Wish me luck, because I've seen videos and it looks torturous. So I'm going to do that. I will hopefully be back in a reasonably sound state of mind. It does look really difficult, so I'm not quite sure how frazzled I'm going to be after doing it, and I really hope I don't scratch anything. I think, as I mentioned, I could already see some paint scrapage. It may be that it's not scrapage, it might just be that it's not complete, but at the tops of the thighs here, these points right at the tops of the thighs, I don't know how well it comes out on camera, but they're not quite painted all the way to the top. There's some sort of like blue showing, darker blue, but I think that's probably more a case of it not being painted than it's scraping so far. But yeah, I have a feeling that this could be a candidate for scraping some of this beautiful blue paint off, and that would be a shame. So fingers crossed, but I'll be back either way to let you see the results. And we're back with a look at alt mode. I feel like the lady from Titanic. It feels like it's been 84 years since I did the last part of this video. Suffice to say, that was not the most simple transformation I've ever done. That's not to say it was a horrible transformation in terms of the complexity, but there are a lot of steps, a lot of little bits to move, and I was trying to be super careful because the last thing I want is to scratch any of the paint. I'm sure I'll probably end up with some minor scratches. In fact, I think I've already got a couple of little things. Yeah, not the easiest transformation in terms of the complexity, but it's mostly fair in that it's not trying to make you do anything that feels like it's going to break or is not comfortable to do. You know, like obviously some figures out there, like the original Andras, for example, with the feet, you know, they felt like they were going to break. They were very difficult to do. But this is complex but not unfair, I think is the best way to say. the best way to describe it, sorry. Anyway, let's actually have a look at the alt mode, shall we? Because it's a thing of beauty, I think. It's really nice looking alt mode from all angles. Again, you know, the underside does possibly belie the fact that it is a robot folded up on itself. But what I really like about this figure, and something that other versions of Scourge haven't managed, is that it doesn't feel like a shell former. You know, it's not a case of this guy being, you know, just Scourge with his wings folded over him. There's a lot of extra stuff going to it, and maybe that's why they sort of did the extra or added the extra complexity to try and take it away from that shell former style of transformer. It really does look good. As you can see, you know, the wings have been folded into different positions, and the they, you know, this part of them have ended up down here and here, and you know, the backpacks formed the entire back here. It's not like the wings have formed the entire back of the skiff, or whatever Scourge is actually supposed to be. I think he's supposed to be some kind of space skiff or futuristic hovercraft or something. I think they do describe him in the original G1 as a sort of scouring vehicle or something like that, an all-terrain scouring vehicle, which whatever that is. But yeah, I think it just looks really nice. It's very close. Well, it certainly evokes memories and feelings of the original animation model far better than any of the other versions, the original G1 toy or Andras. The colours are obviously far more accurate as far as I'm concerned. I really like the design. It's really clean when you look at it. You know, the fillers they've added do make it, you know, look pretty solid from most angles. There are a couple of gaps here and here, as you can see, but the fillers there help, and the fillers there are really good. I haven't actually tabbed this piece down as far as it can go. It's supposed to catch on these little bits, but I didn't want to scratch the paint there, so I've left it slightly unclasped. But other than that, you know, I think it looks really, really solid, and I like the way that the various bits unfurl from the robot mode to form the alt mode display here on this piece. Oops, pulled his head up. So you're not having, you know, you've actually got a size differential between the robot mode and the alt mode, which you should have. And I love, again, the metallic red that they've used for this. I was never a fan of the way X-Transbots Andras had LEDs. I think electronics and transformers are largely worthless and frustrating, and you know, the amount of batteries you have to use to get them to work, and there's battery leakage, and they're a pain in the arse to install, and then the end result is you have to compromise in other modes when you don't have them on, because Andras had dead eyes, so much so that I actually painted my Andras's eyes red when I had the opportunity. And again, in the alt mode, he doesn't have these lovely red things, whereas Inquisitor here does. Yeah, I really do like the way this looks. I think it's really nice. Sadly, I am not going through the rigmarole of transforming Andras so that you can see the comparison with that. I'm sure there are going to be other videos that do, so please feel free to look at those. But yeah, Andras is not a figure that I really want to be struggling with for the sake of doing a vehicle comparison. So apologies for that. But yeah, I honestly do think Inquisitor looks really, really nice in this mode. I think there's a little bit of an annoyance in terms of the fact that it doesn't have any landing gear, so you'll have to be careful what surface you place it on because of this lovely paint. You don't want to ruin the paint finish. So obviously I've got mine on a cloth surface here, so I feel fairly safe that it's not going to be damaged. Obviously with this, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to actually attach it because, again, I don't want to damage my figure. But this would be where the flight stand attaches under here, or the adapter for the flight stand, because it's not actually a flight stand in full. But again, I'm not planning on attaching that. I think, let me just get it. It clips on here, or maybe I've got it the wrong way around. No, it goes onto here, doesn't it? It attaches to that there, and then those two holes there, and it will go on like that. But I'm not going to do that because I don't want to cause any damage for something that ultimately I'm not going to be using. Again, a bit of a joke, that inclusion of that you have to actually then buy another flight stand from Fans Toys to actually use it, especially with a figure like this, where people would actually like to display him maybe flying in alt mode. Similar with their Cyclonus as well. The flight stand with that wasn't included either, was it? But anyway, so yeah, that's it really. Not much more to say other than that. I think it's a beautiful looking alt mode, easily the best alt mode version of Scourge we've seen so far, and yeah, clearly has leaps and bounds ahead in terms of the shape and the colours and just everything. I think it just looks a lot better than Andrath in alt mode. So yeah, really happy with the way this one turned out. Now there is one other mode to show you before we move on to the next section. So I'm just going to do that quickly, and yeah, then we'll be back with some comparisons. But yeah, just one little thing to show you, but I'm going to do it off camera because it involves a partial transformation. So just bear with me. And here we are, back with the gimmick in question. And we all remember that in the show and in the movie, Scourge would pop his head up in his alt mode so he could converse with his fellow Decepticons, the Sweeps, Galvatron, etc. And this toy, much like the X-Transbots version, does incorporate that gimmick. You'll forgive me, I haven't actually tabbed all this back together properly because there's no point, as it's going to go back into robot mode shortly. But yes, basically you unclip a few panels here, obviously lift this piece up, flip this whole head piece around, get the collar back out, put this nacelle down inside of there, and then the head is free. Obviously a few more gaps in there that you would have when it was in proper alt mode, or the alt mode proper I should say. But yeah, it still looks okay, I think, and it does give that little gimmick, the silly little gimmick of Scourge's head being available, to look up and around as much as he can, and with his collar allowing. And yeah, looks great, I think, doesn't it? It's a silly little gimmick, but he did it in the show, so it is screen accurate, and especially from the movie, very memorable there. Although very confusing in the movie, because I believe the line when he flies down and during the attack on Autobot City and pops his head out, and you hear the line, "You want me to gut Ultra Magnus for you?" It's actually Cyclonus saying that, which is odd because Galvatron's inside Cyclonus at that moment. But yeah, my understanding is the script says it's not actually Scourge saying that line, it's Cyclonus, but it looks like Scourge is saying it because he flies by and pops his head out. But a little bit of trivia and all that there. Anyway, that's everything I want to show about the alt mode now. I'm just pontificating. So let's get him transformed back into bot mode, and then we'll do some comparisons because I know everyone loves a comparison. Before I give my usual summary and final thoughts. So just a second, and I'll be right back. And here we are with a look at Inquisitor with some of his Transformers the movie cohorts, I guess you could say. Obviously we've got the Fans Toys Sovereign and Quietus here, the M and T versions respectively, which are arguably slightly more toon accurate, or movie accurate anyway. Yeah, I think he fits in really well, doesn't he, with these guys? And aesthetically speaking, he is probably the closest to the toon models. They are obviously a little bit older now. Obviously, Sovereign's quite old. Sovereign was one of the earliest bots I got actually in my collection. Not this version, the original version. But even Quietus is a few years old now, and Fans Toys weren't quite going as slavishly toon as they are now, or I say slavishly, as toon as they are now. I don't think they're necessarily slavish, but there are obvious deviations from the animation model on both, but they do still evoke the spirit of the characters. But I think Inquisitor is just that little bit closer. The proportions, the colouring. It still retains that metallic finish, which is great because it fits in with the aesthetics of these guys. But it is, I think, just ever so slightly closer to the animation model and the colourings and the stylings of the movie version of Scourge. So yeah, I think he looks really, really good as part of this set. With his the Fans Toys, the Fans Toys set. And what I wanted to do as well, just to give a little bit of comparison with some other figures, because I know not everyone loves Sovereign and Quietus, but while we don't really have a decent alternative for Sovereign at the moment, I don't really count Tyrant, DX9's Tyrant, until X-Transbot gets its collective fingers out of its butts and releases their version of Galvatron. Then we are not going to have anything really to compete. But we do obviously have competing stuff for Cyclonus. So let me just move these guys out of the way, and then I will bring some other stuff in. I wanted to bring in, I've only got this OG version of Elegos, but just to show you how he scales with him. Obviously Elegos is a big boy. He's even taller than Quietus, and I don't think that looks too bad. I think the paint job on the new version is better. I do really like the newly painted version. The reason I haven't gone in on it is because although I've got the soul patch version of the face on now, that's just to differentiate him from Quietus. I would personally not display him with that if I were to have the figure, but they didn't include any faces without the soul patch in the reissue, so I decided not to go for it. But I know he's a very chunky bot, and obviously the legs are somewhat massive on it. But I think actually he's probably closer to the animation model in many respects than Quietus is. So I think this actually is a really good comparison to make, because I know from reading forums, etc., a lot of people are planning on pairing Inquisitor with Elegos. So I think he looks really... I still think he looks really good with this, and I think perhaps even the updated version, the redecoed version, will look even better because of that extra cover of paint that it's got rather than the bare plastic. So yeah, I think it looks really good. I'm just going to get him out of the way. Oh, so we can bring in the comparison that I'm sure everyone was expecting initially. And that is Andras. Let me move him around a little bit more so he's facing a bit more central. Yeah, I mean, not a bad figure. I've had it for a long time now. It does a great job of portraying the character. I think it's a really nice looking figure. I guess coming from the initial G1 toy, as I've mentioned before, which looked nothing like the animation model. Coming from that to this, to Andras was a big step up. But when you've got him next to Inquisitor, you can see just how different he is and how much he does actually deviate from the animation model, not just in terms of the sculpt, but also colors as well. But there's no getting away from the fact that you can see the feet are just so much more accurate. In fact, the whole of the lower legs are much, much more accurate on Inquisitor. If you look at that, there's a whole bunch of detailing missing from the legs that, it's just night and day difference, isn't it? In terms of the lower portions. I think the upper body is a closer match, but it's definitely still, better on the Fans Toys effort, which you'd expect after, years to refine what X-Transbot did, sort of take a cue from that and then work on bettering it. I do like the fact that this one has ball jointed fingers, so you can do a claw pose, which you can't really do with that guy. But the colours are especially wrong. I never really understood what they based that colour scheme on, X-Transbots. I think it might have been the Headmaster series, because when you watch that, he does seem to be, have this kind of like powder blue colouring as opposed to the grey that he has on the movie. Sorry, but definitely his blue is more like the movie there than it is the blue that they've used there. And even when they did the reissue of Andras, I don't think the colours they used were correct, because they did a lot of silver, which this really isn't. It's more of a metallic grey than it is silver. Yeah, I guess now Andras will be he'll become a sweep, or just maybe I'll have him in alt mode. Or probably what I'll do was, when I get the when I get the X Transbots Galvatron, I'll mix and match all three of them from both sets, and we'll have two sets, because they are my my favourite, some of my favourite Transformers of all time, because of the Marvel run. Anyway, that's probably it for the comparisons. I don't really want to bring out a load of other movie bots and things like that, but I think this does a decent job of showing you the major differences between the characters and how he looks with the fellow Unicronian heralds, etc. So yeah, I'm going to get this tidied away, and I'll come back with some final thoughts. Okay, I'm back with some final thoughts then. Honestly, been a long time coming, this figure. I've been waiting for it for some time. It does have its issues. I think obviously the transformation is ludicrously involved and complicated, as you can see by the size and length of the book. If you've watched any of the videos online showing you how to transform it, you'll know what I mean. I mean, the end result actually is a very nice looking alt mode, with its own sort of gimmicks from the Toon. But I'm a bot mode display guy, so that will not be happening again. I will not be transforming it back and forth very often. So, you know, it's not as bad as all that for me. But I mean, if you're somebody who likes to flip things back and forth a lot, it's probably something worth bearing in mind. The bot mode, though, looks absolutely superb. I think it's a really, really lovely looking figure. I think it's got a fantastic deco. Honestly, one of the nicest decos Fans Toys has done in a while, actually. Just definitely better than their previous two Decepticon movie bots. Yeah, just love the way it looks. The colours are a lot more accurate than the previous ones. The sculpt is really nice within the confines of a 3D realised object. And yeah, just great face sculpts. A nice, reasonable set of accessories in terms of the gun is nice, and you get a target master, etc. Big minus point for the problem with the target master being able to peg into the hand or into the alt mode properly. That really is lamentable, and does knock a few points off in my book. But for someone like me, who's a bot mode display guy and has been waiting to add this figure to their collection, I am really happy with the way it turned out in terms of the aesthetics. Yeah, it's a big thumbs up from me in that regard. Absolutely happy to recommend it. Think anyone who is a fan of the character is going to be really happy with this. And even if you've got Andras, I mean, Andras would be a perfectly serviceable sweep, as I think I mentioned. This is definitely going to be my primary Scourge going forward, with Sovereign for the time being, and maybe I think just because it pairs so well, I'm probably going to go with all three of the Fans Toys bots as a set. But maybe when the X Transbots Galvatron comes around, that might change. But I do have a soft spot for Elagos, but I think Quietus just looks good because of the similar paint jobs. But anyway, yeah, I honestly, if you're on the fence, I would say go for it. It's a really lovely looking figure. Just bear in mind the transformation is a bit of a nightmare, but I think it's worthwhile ultimately, because it does look good in alt mode as well. It's lovely to see, I guess, a fully realised version of the character. From looking at the G1 toy, which was incredibly rudimentary. I still have that upstairs on display with the other movie bots, Galvatron and Cyclonus. But all three of their toy designs from the 80s bore very little resemblance to their animation cartoon models, their comic models. So it's just amazing what we're getting nowadays with the sort of close approximation of those character models in a 3D realised figure. So yeah, exciting times if you're into collecting toy robots. Anyway, thanks for joining me for this video. I hope you've enjoyed it. I don't have anything else on order at the moment apart from X-Transbot's Galvatron, Abaddon, however you say it. God knows when we're going to see that thing. I've had it on order for about a year now, I think, and it was supposed to be out in the summer last year, then at Christmas, and still no release date for it or any updates. So it's slightly concerned for it at the moment when we're actually going to get it. But as soon as we do, I will do a review. I don't have anything else I'm really bothered about at the moment. I can't decide whether I'm going to go in on any Constructicons. Not 100% happy with any of them at the moment, and I've got a Combiner Wars set which sort of scratches my Devastator itch. I just don't know if I want to wait multiple years to see if any company finishes a set of 6 bots and pay 600-700 quid for them, but we shall see. You know, cost of living's biting for everyone, isn't it? So I don't want to. I'm being a lot more selective with what I buy, let's put it that way. Anyway, enough of that. I hope you're all having a good start to the new year and things are going well for you. I'm hoping to put out some more content anyway, even if it's not new reviews. I'm thinking of perhaps doing some retro reviews of older G1 Transformers that I've got, doing a little bit of a nostalgia trip with some of those old G1 figures. So maybe look out for those if you're interested. But until such time, it just remains for me to say thanks again for joining me, and take care, everyone.